Day of Empowered People today in the Orange City. Greetings to all. This is Nayan Kulkarni, delighted and welcome you to all this 5th edition of Orange City Literature Festival organized by SGR Knowledge Foundation in association with GH Raisoni University, powered by Raisoni Group of Institutions. So today we bring to you the top decoding economics and policy topics by Ajay Shah in a conversation with Chirag Thakkar. So let's have a big hand for Ajay Shah and Chirag Thakkar. So firstly, I would like to introduce Ajay Shah sir. So Ajay Shah sir studied at IIT Bombay and USC Los Angeles. He has held position at Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, Indira Gandhi Institute for Development Research, Department of Economic Affairs at Ministry of Finance and National Institute for Public Finance and Policy. He is now co-founder at XKDR Forum. His research is at intersection of economics, law and public administration. His second book, co-authored with Vijay Kelkar, The Service of the Republic, The Art and Science of Economic Policy. And our second guest is moderator Chirag Thakkar. So Chirag Thakkar sir is a senior publishing professional with close to a decade's experience in publishing. He is currently editor at Penguin Random House India and has previously championed and platformed books with Rowley Books and Oxford University Press. Chirag sir has published a wide range of authors such as Gulzar Sahab, Taslima Nasri, Aruna Roy, Tarun Tehlani, Jairam Ramesh, Zoya Hassan, Romila Thapar, Lakshmi Subramanyam, among others. He has hosted and produced podcasts Beyond the Lines and taught workshop in writing and publishing. His writing has appeared in Scroll, Hindustan Times, Kashmir Reader and The Quint. So I request to Chirag sir, I will hand over this session to Chirag sir. So let's have a big hand. I must appreciate the guest of this session for having accepted and structured the topic into a frame of 40 minutes of the audience questionnaires and answers.
This is working. Did you guys hear us?
No.
Not yet. It's good.
This is on.
Maybe we can share.
Thank you for the introductions.
Thank you everyone who's happy to be here with us for this very fantastic engaging conversation. I hope we can keep it engaging and exciting for all of you. Those of you who might be sitting behind, if you feel comfortable, please step on ahead and take the seats in the front row. All are finished to that. Right. So we'll keep this freewheeling between Ajay and I. Most of the asking questions. I would like to preface especially that I'm not an economist, so some of my questions might come across as basic, but feel free to elaborate. We'll also try and keep time, and towards the end of this conversation, open it up to the audience for your questions for Ajay. So Ajay, lots been said about the economy, and famously it's been compared to various kinds of animals, particularly the elephant image has stuck around. There's been various preceding words to the elephant that have been used to describe the economy. There's the lumbering elephant, there's a dancing elephant, there's the elephant that's just learned to run or walk, and there's been the deeper attempt at sort of appropriating the tiger, and there's the dragon and tiger in terms of neighboring economies that India compared to Is there an animal metaphor you like, or do you think that sticks better, and why might that be?
So, I want to say two things. The first is that the Indian story is not one of long, remorseless, consistent performance. We went through a bad period from 1947 to 1979. The great economist Krishna Raj was so exasperated at the sustained failure of India to achieve high economic growth in that period. He coined the phrase the Hindu rate of growth.
Yes.
Okay, and for non-specialists, that is a derogatory phrase. That it was in exasperation that maybe because we are Hindu, we can just do 3.5%. The Hindu rate of growth was 3.5%. So we were in a big stuck from 1947 to 1979. That was a significant growth acceleration compared with the previous 50 years. So when the British took control of India from 1858 till 1913, things went well. From 1913 to 1947 was a big mess. The whole world was in turmoil and many things went wrong here as well. So compared to that, there was a nice acceleration from 1947 to 1979, but it was 3.5%. Then we got an acceleration from 79 to 91, and then we got a 20-year sprint. 1991 to 2011 was a sprint. It was the most glorious performance of the Indian economy ever, and we're still trying to get back to something approaching that. We're not there yet. Okay. Now let me turn to animal metaphors by first telling a sad story, which is that I feel we in India, we the Indian elite, do wrong by treating growth and success as an inevitability. We treat it as a given that one day we're going to be an advanced economy. We treat it as a given that we're going to be as cool as the UK one day. I just want to say, no, destiny does not hold such promises. There's no guarantee that a developing country will develop. Somewhere inside the word developing country is either that you're a child and just inevitably you will grow. And unfortunately, human history, okay, and we have one master of political economy and economic history, a Nagpur native in this audience. Okay, all of you should talk to him more. He's smiling. History makes no such promises, and many countries have gone astray. Many countries have got stuck. There is a famous phrase in this field which is called the middle income trap, where countries kind of get halfway out and they get trapped. So, are you a child or are you a dwarf? It's by no means clear. And it is an enormous project to build the institutions of liberal democracy as the advanced economies did. And I don't want to use the term West because it's equally Japan, it's Taiwan, it's South Korea. Okay? So every successful economy in the world is a liberal free market economy. So it's not a Western idea, it's a universal idea. But it's not easy, it is a tremendous transformation. So my animal metaphor of what do I aspire for India is I dream that we will be the tortoise. Okay? I dream that we will be like the UK or the US or Japan. We can bloody plod away for 100 years and become rich, and that would be a pretty good thing. So I don't obsess on sprinting because actually that short-termism that comes with the sprinting can be pretty damaging. There are many short-termist ways to get a brief growth episode. You can do a great tech boom and then your banks are bankrupt. And then for 20-30 years you're overcoming that. You can shatter the environment. You can trample on the rights of people. You can do crude dictatorships like Stalin and Mao that mobilize the people and force them in certain ways. There are many bad ways to get it done for 10, 20, 30 years. But then they peter out. So if the long history of economic growth teaches us one thing, it is that the animal we should dream of is the tortoise. So in a tortoise and a hare metaphor, the damn tortoise means you gotta stay good for 100 years. Just keep building for 100 years. Change institutions. An arc of ever increasing human freedom, of political freedom, of economic freedom. Don't get trapped in bad institutions, don't get trapped in an authoritarian thing. Then the country will move forward. So my dream of an animal is the tortoise.
Right. If you could have someone look into the mind, Thank you. That's a great visual and metaphor to work with. Very optimistic that we should sort of aim for the long game, long run. But now let's get to the heart of your book's thesis. In terms of the Indian economy sort of underperformance since 2011, which roughly you picked to too much statism or too much state, which is anyway kind of labyrinth. Too much statism is basically the labyrinth that business houses, firms, market has to sort of navigate. Explain this. What does the scenario look like?
It is a truly sad thing to be in business in India today. Okay? In this audience, are you running a business? Do you have a sibling running a business? Do you have a family member running a business? Okay, then does this resonate? Okay, it's no fun running a business in India today. You have to deal with some inspectors, you have to deal with some regulators, you have to deal with some tax people, you have to deal with the enforcement directorate, you have to deal with current account controls, capital account controls. You can't use your credit card to buy cloud computing, okay, and so on it goes. So it is just become a compliance nightmare. And either you build a minimum size of an organization, that you've got to be a really big organization to pay for all that compliance cost, to pay for the people who will sit and do all these things. Or like really the world of business is not for you, or you're violating laws in order to be in business, and then you're permanently vulnerable because tomorrow they'll raid you and they'll catch you. Okay? So there is a compliance story which has just gone out of control. That we have trapped firms in India in a maze of rules, regulations, restrictions, constraints. The phrase central planning is used to convey what is wrong with the old India. So in the old India, everything went wrong because of central planning. The government would control everything. The government would give you a permission. Can I start this? Can I not start this? Okay. Now we thought that we were supposed to dismantle the central planning starting from 1991. But that is absolutely not happening. Particularly where regulation has come. In field after field, the power of a government department has just moved to a regulator. And now the regulator is the central planner. And the regulators have hundreds of people with a full-time job of tormenting the industry. Whereas earlier, there would be a skeleton crew of a couple of people in some department in New Delhi. And while companies had to deal with that, it was a modest level of interference. Now it has become an intricate, detailed level of interference. So the old central planning story about India was supposed to be like this, that we would ask a business person that are you focused on technology and customers, or are you thinking more about the government, are you managing the government environment? And what was wrong with the old India, what was wrong with the stagnation of India was that the business community was spending a lot of its time and was greatly constrained by the government environment, by managing up to the government, rather than looking at technology consumer competitors, should be the basic DNA of a market economy. Well, we're back to something worse than what you've known in the 70s and 80s. Today, for everybody in the world of business, your main job is managing up to the government. You have to manage the income tax inspector, you have to manage the enforcement directorate, you have to manage the regulator, you have to manage rules, regulations, procedures, labor inspector, something or the other will trip you up. And the dominant capability in Indian business today is your ability to manage the state. And that's a sure path to mediocrity. You get stagnation, you don't get progress. Progress comes from the dynamism of the market economy, where people are looking at technology, people are looking at competitors, people are looking at consumers, are innovating, are experimenting, are building new things. So that is the difficulty. We in India are back to a whole new age of central planning, and that bodes ill. It's not a dynamic environment. It's not a high growth environment.
No, that's very well put. To car-carrying capitalists, I'm always intrigued at the kind of liberal fantasy, the extreme right liberal fantasy of the economic right fantasy of completely doing away with the state, relegating the state to a role of just simply airbrushing or problem solving or crisis management whenever like a business fails or there's the economic crisis, what happens to welfare economics? What happens to feeding the poor? What happens to public healthcare, public education? What happens to principles of social justice, commitment to social justice? What do you do with the big beast of poverty alleviation? So my question therefore is, should we do away with the state, or how do you imagine the state there?
I'm not an anarchist, I'm not thinking of doing away with the state. I am certainly dreaming of an India where there is much less state. Okay? So, on a normal day, we should lead our lives by ourselves. Okay? So, we should not have a surveillance state, we should not have a state that is watching us, we should not be legible to the state should not be deep inside our life. We should have a lot more freedom and a lot less state, but the lot less state doesn't have to be zero. Now, what should the state do? There is a clear economic philosophy and a technical strength in the design of the state, and this is around the words market failure. So the economists are the great political philosophers around this subject, where there is a technical word, market failure. I won't burden you with the detail, but can I just have a copy of the book? Okay, so may I point you to a book, Ajay Shah and I wrote the book, this material is there. Okay, it's called In Service of the Republic, The Art and Science of Economic Policy. So, there's a technical machinery that understands where a simple free market solution does not work, and that guides us on the ideology and the philosophy of where you need state. Okay, so, let me talk about some examples that I think all of us will be on board. Okay, there is an air quality crisis in North India. Okay, North India has the world's worst air quality. It has vast implications. By the way, contrary to the headlines, Delhi does not have an air quality problem. North India, the entire North India, has an air quality problem.
And now West India is related to the problem. Bombay, for instance.
Climate glitch. But fundamentally, what is happening is there is the Vindhyas and there is the Himalayas, and in between is the bowl of the lowlands of North India, defined by the Gangetic Plain. And it just so happens all winter long there is no wind there. So all the dust that humans put in the air just stays there. And millions of tons of dust is being put there. And man-made dust has characteristics that we are not evolved as animals to deal with. We can deal with a dust storm. Okay? So a dust storm in Rajasthan is part of the 1 lakh years of human evolution. We can deal with that. So dust going into our lungs is not a problem. What is the problem is the characteristics of modern dust. The dust in the modern era consists of things like heavy metals, which below the particle size of 2.5 microns go into the lungs and directly get injected into the blood. So breathing Delhi air is tantamount to getting lead and cadmium and zirconium directly injected into your bloodstream. It damages the intellectual development of children. Okay, it systematically suppresses the IQ of North India compared to below the Vindhyas. Okay, it damages people in middle age and accelerates the onset of the deteriorative illnesses of old age. So, it's a first order mess, and only the state can solve it. There is no way. Only the state can go after every source of dust going up in the air and use the unique monopoly of violence, the coercive power of the state, to create rules, laws, procedures that will go after people. Only the state can build a 24-hour drone monitoring of the entire North India, where anybody lighting a fire gets an immediate identification of the GPS coordinates, and a policeman shows up there and gives them a ticket of paying a fine of 5,000 rupees. That is the level of madness that is required all over North India. That if a watchman at a complex sets up one small fire to stay warm in winter, they've got to be seen by drone and stopped right there, and they've got to get a 5,000 rupee fine. That is the mania that is required to stop the air quality crisis of North India, and only the state can do it. And I'm all for the use of state power to do this. Okay?
But that would require the state to interfere in the market.
Exactly. So I am not advocating an anarchist conception of no state. I'm saying every state intervention should come from an identified market failure. And there is a technical set of definitions of what constitutes market failure. And the air quality disaster of North India fits this bill. And it is where only the state can solve this problem. There can be no private voluntary actions that will solve this problem. So you need a state for those kinds of things. Okay? So poverty, I am of the opinion that you could build an NREGS type system, and people will self-select themselves to do manual labor in the hot sun. So you have to be truly poor and down on your luck to go out in the hot sun and do manual labor. And so we should build a program like NREGS. It is the single great idea of Indian welfare, and so that poor people will self-select themselves. It doesn't require a whole lot of money. It is a failure of modern Indian politics. It is a failure of the modern Indian political imagination that almost all the work of the Indian state and almost all the money of the Indian state goes into welfare programs. You don't need that. Okay? Most welfare programs in India target 80% of the population rather than the 20% of the population that is poor. So all this is the decline of good sense in Indian democracy. So I don't share a welfareist idea that you need a vast amount of welfare programs run by the state. You do need to solve a poverty problem, and one instrument in NREGS can solve it.
I see. I think there's an issue with this mic again. That's interesting. I think it's a position. I guess among many other positions that is often at the table. And with the other argument that you make, for instance, is that economic crimes, you and Kate report that economic crimes should be punished. So instead, penalty should do the job. But then, what do you do with your bad boy billionaires, right? What do you do about your Nirav Modis of the world? What do you do about Vijay Mallya and Sumitra Roy's?
You said correctly that we advocate that economic crimes should be matched by fines. Okay? So the intuition is an incentives argument. So imagine I'm going to break a law and I'm going to make an ill-gotten gain of ₹100. Okay? So the economist's proposal is that imagine that there is a fine of ₹300 which hits the person with a probability of 1/3. Okay? So with the 1/3 probability, I'll get caught. And when I'm caught, I'll be fined ₹300. Okay? So then on expectation, I'm going to gain nothing. Because 2/3 of the time I'll get away with it, but 1/3 of the time I'll get a fine of 300. So on average, I will lose ₹100 and I'll have to suffer the enforcement proceeding, I'll have to pay money to lawyers and so on. If you can create a world where a person gets caught with a 1/3 probability and there is a fine which is 3x the ill-gotten gain, then actually you're done. Because people are not fools, people are not instinctively criminals. It's an evil British idea that there are criminal tribes. Nobody is a bad person, nobody is a good person. People are rational. People respond to incentives. So if people stand to make a profit by breaking rules, on average, they'll do that. But if people stand to get caught by breaking rules, they won't do that. So our game is not retribution or revenge. Our game is reshaping incentives. And I think that goes to the heart of a political philosophy problem. I think there is a great amount of populism in the Indian body politic, and I just want to be careful around terms. The term populism in the technical field of political science means the political strategy of fanning the hatred of the masses against the elite. And unfortunately, I think it's an evergreen popular idea to throw stones at rich people, to throw stones at billionaires, to throw stones at successful people. And this is a really bad thing that has sprung up in India. And by the way, I want to say, this is not a feature of the independence movement. Okay, so many other independence movements turned into lynching rich people all over the colonial world. It is the greatness of the Indian independence movement that it did not. Okay, so the insistence on non-violence, the satyagraha, the ahimsa, these tenets really held India in good stead for a long time, and we were protected from that populism, and it really got an upsurge with Indira Gandhi, and then again in more recent times, when it's become perfectly normal and fashionable to go after rich people. That we've openly started championing that populist ideology, and there is populism of the left, and there is populism of the right, and they're equally toxic. And that's what you got to be careful about. So I'd like to say that we should not hate billionaires. Okay? Billionaires are also people, they're good people. They have friends and family and they love their people, they love their cats, they love their brothers, just like you and me. They are not intrinsically bad people. It's become normalized in India to excoriate rich and successful people, and I just want to worry about that. No country will ever succeed without making the world safe for its elite. Okay? A country is made by its elite. We need the intellectual elite, the artistic and cultural elite, the business and moneyed elite to love the country, to stay in the country, to not feel endangered, to not leave. And there is way too much populism in India today. So I feel we should not get into the words revenge, retribution, and envy. We should get into the word incentives. So rules, procedures, fines should be so structured that people use incentives to break rules and get ahead. That's all. Beyond that, we don't need to get into the words revenge, retribution, and envy.
Make your point, Raj.
Let's put in the air, just stays there. And millions of tons of dust is being put there. And man-made dust has characteristics that we are not evolved as animals to deal with. We can deal with a dust storm. Okay? So a dust storm in Rajasthan is part of the 1 lakh years of human evolution. We can deal with that. So dust going into our lungs is not a problem. The problem is the characteristics of modern dust. The dust in the modern era consists of things like heavy metals, which below the particle size of 2.5 microns go into the lungs and directly get injected into the blood. So breathing Delhi air is tantamount to getting lead and cadmium and zirconium directly injected into your bloodstream. It damages the intellectual development of children. Okay, it systematically suppresses the IQ of North India compared to below the Vindhyas. Okay, it damages people in middle age and accelerates the onset of the deteriorative illnesses of old age. So it's a first order mess, and only the state can solve it. There is no way. Only the state can go after every source of dust going up in the air and use the unique monopoly of violence, the coercive power of the state, to create rules, laws, procedures that will go after people. Only the state can build a 24-hour drone monitoring of the entire North India, where anybody lighting a fire gets an immediate identification of the GPS coordinates, and a policeman shows up there and gives them a ticket of paying a fine of 5,000 rupees. That is the level of madness that is required all over North India. That if a watchman at a complex sets up one small fire to stay warm in winter, they've got to be seen by drone and stop right there, and they've got to get a 5,000 rupee fine. That is the mania that is required to stop the air quality crisis of North India, and only the state can do it. And I'm all for the use of state power to do this. Okay?
But that would require the state to interfere in the market.
Exactly. So I am not advocating an anarchist conception of no state. I'm saying every state intervention should come from an identified market failure. And there is a technical set of definitions of what constitutes market failure. And the air quality disaster of North India fits this bill. And it is where only the state can solve this problem. There can be no private voluntary actions that will solve this problem. So you need a state for those kinds of things. Okay? So poverty, I am of the opinion that you could build an NREGS type system, and people will self-select themselves to do manual labor in the hot sun. So you have to be truly poor and down on your luck to go out in the hot sun and do manual labor. And so we should build a program like NREGS. It is the single great idea of Indian welfare. And so that poor people will self-select themselves. It doesn't require a whole lot of money. It is a failure of modern Indian politics. It is a failure of the modern Indian political imagination that almost all the work of the Indian state and almost all the money of the Indian state goes into welfare programs. You don't need that. Okay? Most welfare programs in India target 80% of the population rather than the 20% of the population that is poor. So all this is the decline of good sense in Indian democracy. So I don't share a welfarist idea that you need a vast amount of welfare programs run by the state. You do need to solve a poverty problem, and one instrument, an NREGS, can solve it.
I see. I think there's an issue with this mic again. That's interesting. I think it's a position, I guess, among many other positions that is often at the table. And with, the other argument that you make, for instance, is that economic crimes, you and Kay could report, that economic crimes should be punished, instead penalty should do the job. But then, what do you do with your bad boy billionaires, right? What do you do about your Nirav Modis of the world? What do you do about Vijay Mallya's and Sumit Roy's?
You said correctly that we advocate that economic crimes should be matched by fines. Okay, so the intuition is an incentives argument. So imagine I'm going to break a law and I'm going to make an ill-gotten gain of ₹100. Okay, so the economist's proposal is that imagine that there is a fine of ₹300 which hits the person with a probability of 1/3. Okay, so with the 1/3 probability, I'll get caught, and when I'm caught, I'll be fined ₹300. Okay. So then, on expectation, I'm going to gain nothing because 2/3 of the time I'll get away with it, but 1/3 of the time I'll get a fine of 300. So on average, I will lose ₹100, and I'll have to suffer the enforcement proceeding. I'll have to pay money to lawyers and so on. If you can create a world where a person gets caught with a 1/3 probability, and there is a fine which is 3x the ill-gotten gain, then actually you're done. Because people are not fools, people are not instinctively criminals. It's an evil British idea that there are criminal tribes. Nobody is a bad person, nobody is a good person. People are rational. People respond to incentives. So if people stand to make a profit by breaking rules, on average, they'll do that. But if people stand to get caught by breaking rules, they won't do that. So our game is not retribution or revenge. Our game is reshaping incentives. And I think that goes to the heart of a political philosophy problem. I think there is a great amount of populism in the Indian body politic, and I just want to be careful around terms. The term populism in the technical field of political science means the political strategy of fanning the hatred of the masses against the elite. And unfortunately, I think it's an evergreen popular idea to throw stones at rich people, to throw stones at billionaires, to throw stones at successful people. And this is a really bad thing that has sprung up in India. And by the way, I want to say, this is not a feature of the independence movement. Okay, so many other independence movements turned into lynching rich people all over the colonial world. It is the greatness of the Indian independence movement that it did not. Okay, so the insistence on non-violence, the satyagraha, the ahimsa, these tenets really held India in good stead for a long time, and we were protected from that populism, and it really got an upsurge with Indira Gandhi, and then again in more recent times, where it's become perfectly normal and fashionable to go after rich people. That we have openly started championing that populist ideology, and there is populism of the left and there is populism of the right, and they're equally toxic. And that's what you got to be careful about. So I'd like to say that we should not hate billionaires. Okay? Billionaires are also people, they're good people. They have friends and family, and they love their people, they love their cats, they love their brothers, just like you and me. They are not intrinsically bad people. It's become normalized in India to excoriate rich and successful people, and I just want to worry about that. No country will ever succeed without making the world safe for its elite. Okay? A country is made by its elite. We need the intellectual elite, the artistic and cultural elite, the business and moneyed elite to love the country, to stay in the country, to not feel endangered, to not leave. And there is way too much populism in India today. So I feel we should not get into the words revenge, retribution, and envy. We should get into the word incentives. So rules, procedures, fines should be so structured that people use incentives to break rules and get ahead. That's all. Beyond that, we don't need to get into the words revenge, retribution, and envy.
You made your point rather lucidly. One of the things you insist on is that the reforms that were from 1990.
For about 50, 70 years, they only did 2-3 things. and they developed capability. They learned to be a state out of only doing 2-3 things. What were their 2-3 things? Basically, there was a tax system, there was a judiciary, and there was an army. There was nothing else. So for about 100 years, there was nothing else that they did. They only did 3 things: tax system, judiciary, and army. And they learned how to be a state. There is a learning curve of how to be a state. Otherwise, by just building a building and hiring people, you don't get a state. Okay, this is the biggest thing I want to emphasize. A state is an institutional capability. It's not just some people holding some jobs. It is processes, it is training, it is checks and balances. It is institutional capability. It is not some individual or the other doing some idiosyncratic things. It is a consistent predictability of repetitive behavior done in the same way. It is Article 14 that the behavior of the state towards you is the same as the behavior of the state towards you. Okay? So being a state is very hard and it's not something to be taken lightly. Kelkar and I are of this view that you need to pick a few things and focus. And focus in every respect. Focus in the time of the political leadership. Focus in the best talent. There's a desperate shortage of skilled adults inside government. Focus in terms of the money. Okay? And our short list for what to focus on is defense and foreign affairs, tax system, financial and monetary policy, and criminal justice system, which includes judiciary. That's all. And how did we come to this list? We came to this list upside down. That you can't have a civilization if any of these components is absent. You can't have civilization if there are no courts and no police. You can't have civilization if there is no tax money. You can't have civilization if you don't have an army. You can't have civilization if you don't have a money and finance. And everything else you can dispense with.
Right, and now to the second question.
So that's under that finance piece. I don't have the time to say this, but there is a great development of a field in India which is called regulatory theory. Regulatory theory is the general technology about how you build regulators. The knowledge of regulatory theory in India is developed partly out of global knowledge and partly out of the lived experience in India with regulators, including both RBI and SEBI. And may I ask you to go search on YouTube Ajay Shah regulation. So I got a 1 hour 20-minute summary of the Indian knowledge on regulation, and in that show there's a slideshow where there are like 6 pages of references. So can I just pass you on it?
And now on the gentleman's question on India's ambitions to be a Vishwaguru and economic aspirations and things like that.
Yeah. I don't get very excited about that. The United States per capita GDP is $80,000. On purchasing power parity comparable terms, Indian per capita GDP is $9,000. The United States is 8x ahead of India by per capita GDP. Okay? So India is a very, very, very poor country. Now, when you multiply by 1.4 billion with the world's highest population, you get to big impressive numbers. But I feel for the next 100 years, our journey is to learn to be an advanced economy. It's to learn to be like Japan, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like Israel, like the UK. For 100 years, our journey is to learn how to be an advanced economy. By a variety of measures, I've written an article on this. By a variety of measures, India is about 100 years behind the UK and the US. So we have about 100 years of work to do to get to that 9x jump that is required for India to match today's United States. And 100 years from now, the United States will be further ahead. So I don't get excited about that whole story. We're a very poor country. It's better that we understand it, we recognize it, and we get down to work on getting better.
And on the problems of environmental regulation that the person does.
Consider what I said about putting dust into the atmosphere. Dust is a simple, plain English language for SPM, solid particulate matter, which is a technical term for dust in the air. It's not complicated. People are burning fields. People should not burn fields. Okay? When a person burns a field, they are putting smoke into my lungs. That's a negative externality. They are affecting me adversely. So the bottleneck is not in the science and technology. Similarly, we burn a lot of coal in India. We burn a lot of oil in India. We're putting carbon dioxide into the air. We are the 3rd largest producer of carbon dioxide in the whole world. This has to change. And the answers are clear that you need solar, you need wind, you need electric vehicles. There's a revolution. You have to implemented. So the choke points are more in social policy and in economics rather than in engineering. And there is a simple economics around this.
Thank you. That's it in terms of time that we have. I know some of you may have more questions or want to have a chat. I urge all of you to buy a copy of In Service of the Republic. There's a crossword. It's on our side. Get Ajay to.
Can I point everybody to a show?
Yes, of course.
There's a YouTube show which is called Everything is Everything. Can you take a look? It's a 1-hour show that is released every Friday morning.
So grab a copy of the book, get Ajay to sign it, and he's around. So if you have any questions for him, want to have a chat with him, please feel free to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajay sir and Chirag sir. It was such a fantastic, amazing, wonderful, knowledgeable, and great talk. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And until I meet you shortly in the upcoming sessions, this is Nayan Kulkarni signing off. Thank you so much.